retirement is a game of chance, meaning, we don't know, because how you earn what, when, and when you take money has way more of a determinant whether you are fabulously wealthy at the end of your life or flat broke.
Welcome to the Legacy in the Making show. I'm your host, LA's foremost success coach, Maree Torrey. I interview leaders and influencers who've gone beyond the superficial markers of success and claimed true fulfillment by leveraging their positions to create positive and profitable changes in their businesses and beyond. They share their stories and offer real-world, boots-on-the-ground experience that translates into practical advice to apply to your own journey. I invite you to this injection of wisdom and inspiration so you can prevail and leave your own lasting legacy. Hello, everyone. I'm Maree Torrey with the Legacy in the Making show, and I have to tell you, legacy makers today, listen up, because in order for us to have our most effective legacy, the more money we keep of the money that we've made, the more good that we can do in the world. So I highly recommend that you listen to my next guest, Matt Zagula. Matt is best known for helping hardworking people and business owners like you and me reach their lowest legal tax rate and then deploy those tax savings into smart, tax-exempt assets for their future. He's the author of Smart Retirement and founder of the Smart Advisor Network, which is a team of highly skilled tax strategists who deliver on Matt's principles. Matt doesn't discuss the same old recycled financing patterns and ideas that you've heard from everyone else. He is a peer of great communicators like Dan Kenedy, Tracy, Frank Kern, and his mission is to make sure that more Americans have access to similar strategies being used by the top executives and the wealthy elite. I have the pleasure of coaching Matt as his business coach, and I have coached a lot of very sophisticated and brilliant minds in my time. And I have to tell you that Matt is one of the most astute and brilliant minds I have ever worked with. And part of Matt's brilliance is that he can take complex principles and makes them simple and easy to understand. So I really encourage you to listen on today, because this is going to be a very, very juicy episode. So enough of me talking. Matt, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how it is that you came to do what you do.
Well, since you are my coach, you know I hate talking about myself. So that's the worst question I can get out of the gate. But I come from a very small town, and I've lived and stayed and remained in that same small little town that I grew up in for family reasons. And I think that every time I have an opportunity to speak with someone, in this situation of your caliber and talk to your audience, that I'm sure are very unique people who are looking to get the most out of life. It always is kind of funny for me, because I like, it's my upbringing was very simple in a small steel-like town, and I was able to continue to learn and see things a little differently, and I was able to achieve a pretty fair amount of success for a small town guy,
Mm-hmm. And I love that you have actually retained that sense of being humble. It just makes you so approachable and easy to work with and easy to listen to. And I've really enjoyed our relationship so far and wanted to make sure that my audience got to benefit from some of your brilliance. So one of the first things that I noticed, Matt, which is interesting, because, some of my guests, they send me their books. And one of the things that I noticed about your book is that it was printed as a tree neutral book. So tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's really interesting. Many of my audience are looking, if they have not already published books, they are looking to become authors. And I think that this is an important piece of the conversation. What made you decide to do that and explain to us what a tree neutral book is?
Well, I think that if you are considering becoming a person of influence in your marketplace, the word author is embedded in the word authority. So, in order to become an authority and a person of interest in your area, publishing is a wonderful step to take, and I think it's an important step to take. It's also a scary step to take because if your thoughts aren't very cohesive, if your thoughts aren't collected, and you're unwilling to put them in concrete format, there's risk in it, because you are held accountable for the words that you write and the ideas that you put out there. But as I learned from my marketing mentor, Dan Kenedy, there's the ACE principle. There's authority, there's celebrity, and there's exclusivity. And the first starts with authority. And I think when you're able to send a book out, it's a powerful tool. For me, I published with Forbes Books, and I did so because being in the financial world, it does allow you to position yourself appropriately with the crowd that I would typically work with. And I did, as you noticed, make it a little unique insofar as all of my online resources work off of the book. And it's really branded to the advisors who give my book out. So it's not about me, it's about them and the value the reader gets from the book to certainly support the positions that they take with them. So I think that's where you wanted me to head.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that there is a little bit of an environmental consciousness component to that just speaks to me about your sense of responsibility for the world in general.
Oh yeah. You're the conservation. Yeah, that's all very important to me. I'm a big believer in environment. I'm a big believer in people's rights, and I think that if we don't take care of the world won't take care of us. I think that's an important thing.
That's really true. And I know for you, a lot of your inspiration around that comes from being a dad.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and me too. It's just like we want to really safeguard the future for the future generations. And so one of the ways in which you help safeguard the future for future generations is from a financial perspective.
Yes.
And I know that you spend a lot of time sorting through that complex world and demystifying things for people. If you were to share with us the main myths and misunderstandings that people have around how it is that they need to prepare for their financial future and for their retirement, what would those be?
It's a great question. I would tell you there's an easy framework that I've been working on and have further developed since I published the last edition of the book. And it's simply do it right. So the letters D-O and I-T mean something very specific to me. And it's almost a map of how someone should think about their finances. And that D represents debt, because most people don't understand how detrimental debt is. In fact, if you look at the word amortization and you break it down into its word derivatives, amort means to kill. So literally, amortization kills your money. And there's so many poor thoughts about how debt actually works. And it's so detrimental. But at least now with the new truth in lending, if you looked at a mortgage, the companies now do have to show you the amount of interest that is currently in your payment. I was working with a very smart man the other day, and he said, yeah, but my interest rate's only 4.4. And I said, but Mickey, I said, I need you to look at the interest amount. And he said, okay, it's a 100 $61 or whatever on a $700 and some dollar payment. I said, well, now let's divide those.
I'm sorry, I just have to respond to that. He obviously does not live in Los Angeles.
Yeah. He lives in a little town in Illinois.
Right.
Really sweet guy. Yeah.
Who gets a $700 mortgage these days?
In Illinois, you put 000. Right? But no, I mean, it's crazy because what ends up happening, he had plenty of money to pay the mortgage off, but he felt like he was only paying 4.4%. But in reality, embedded, there's 21% interest at that point in the payment. And if you have a newer mortgage, that's 65, 70% of your payment skews that way. So debt first. And then obligations. O is the obligations, and matching that with income. So that O and the I is the obligations that you have. Obligations are our bills, but we also like things. I have clients that enjoy boating and golfing and doing all kinds of things. So they've obligated themselves to an expense that they enjoy. So matching their income, the I and the O together is very important. And finally, the effects of taxation. So do it is very important. Debt, obligations, income, and taxes. If you think of your money in that continuum, you will be much better off than the average person, because the banks have some fake math that they use, and Wall Street has some fake math that it uses that creates a lot of confusion about what to do with your money.
Yeah, it brings to mind for me the whole concept that statistics that appear real can so be skewed to support whatever belief you're wanting to entrench within your audience. So this fake math. Tell us a little bit more about the fake math, because that's really interesting to me.
I think with the banks, the fake math with the bank is really about, it comes down to what your average daily balances are in an amortized loan. And the fact that it stays frozen for 30 days. And you think you're paying one thing, but your volume of interest, the percentage of interest per payment is way higher than what anybody thinks. So, if you're sitting there going, hey, I got a 4% mortgage and I could probably make 7% in the market, I'll invest and forget that. Well, there's some problems with that. And the first thing is the volume of interest per payment is astronomical. So you're not really buying any equity in the home that you're living in. And secondarily, the fallacy of believing you're going to hold the same mortgage for 15, 20, 30 years, which nobody does. Mortgage Bankers Association, the average is about 6 to 7 years on refinance. So we're resetting this volume of interest all the time at 60, 70%. That's financially just devastating to people. So debt first, come up with a plan to eliminate your debts. And a good way to do that is snowballing. If somebody were to go online and Google, debt snowballing, there is plenty of great stuff out there that you can learn from. There's a wonderful website. It's free called undebt.it. So it's undebted, but it's undebt.it. Excellent for learning how to rid yourself of debt on your own.
Great, fantastic. I'll make sure that we put that in the show notes for everyone too. So when you go to legacyinthemakingshow.com, you'll be able to find that under Matt's episode.
Perfect. And I think a lot of people will benefit from just learning that. Now, there's enhancements to that you can make, but that's a great way to start. Okay. Second thing I would tell you is average rate of return. You go in and you sit down with your financial advisor and they say, look, over 3 years, here's what it's done. Over 5 years, here's what it's done. And over 10 years, here's what it's done as an average rate of return. And it's interesting. I just finished a piece of software that I'm releasing for financial advisors in the next 30 days that talks about if we had 20 playing cards, Tony, and that represented the 20 last years in the stock market, and we flipped those, no matter how you and I flip them, the average rate of return would always be the same. But if we assigned a balance to that and you started to take money out anytime during that 20 years, there would literally be 20, the factorial of 20. So what that means is the outcome, if you had $100,000, the ending balance would be one of 20 times 19 times 18 times 17 times 16, all the way down, which when you do the math is 2.43 quintillion.
I'm confused already.
So, well, wait, everyone's like, wait, if I earn 5.6%, should I just have the same number? No, that's the problem. And
so that's the variable. Sounds like a crapshoot.
Actually, it's called Secure Income for Life, and the app actually the top line says retirement is a game of chance, meaning, we don't know, because how you earn what, when, and when you take money has way more of a determinant whether you are fabulously wealthy at the end of your life or flat broke. So it's really about risk management, and people today are doing a absolutely horrible job because they're confused by average rate of return. Let's do a quick, simple thing. I think this will be helpful because I think that's a complex thing. Let me do it simply.
Yeah.
You and I get lucky and we put $1 together into an investment and earn 100%. So our $1 became $2 in a year. That's how good we are. Next year,
I'm excited.
Next year we didn't do so well. We lost half of our money. So we had a plus 100. Now we have a minus 50. So our $2 is back to $1. Third year we were back to our winning ways and we had 100% return. So our dollar grew to 2. And then, of course, in that fourth year, we lose 50% again, and we're back to $1. So we started with $1, and we finished with $1.
I'm relieved we haven't lost the dollar yet. Like, that's good.
At least we got our money, right? The average rate of return on that is going to be factored at plus 100 minus 50 plus 100 minus 50 divided by 4. So on a prospectus or on an investment, it would say the average rate of return is 25%. Well, that sounds pretty awesome. Well, the only difference is if you invested in it for 4 years, you made 0.
Right. So it really, timing has so much to do with it, and
everything to do.
Yeah, and I'm sure, and I having been through a couple of economic slumps now, and frankly, I'm interested to hear what your opinion is, what your expert opinion is around the circumstances that we're in now. I do know that many people that lost their shirts in the kind of 2008, 2009 situation did so because they panicked and they took their money out.
Yeah.
Instead of leaving it in, because so often money is such an emotional decision for people. Yeah. So what do you have to share with us around the situation that we're in right now? I mean, we're just kind of looking at the government supporting many, many people who are out of work. And I am not an economist by any means, but even I can look at that and go, there's going to be fallout from that at some point. I'm assuming that we as taxpayers are going to have to cover that. Is my assumption correct? And what is it that people should be thinking and doing and planning about based on our current circumstances? Because obviously they've changed since you wrote the book.
Individual circumstances are always, infinitely individual, so everybody's different. But I will say this, I mean, I don't hold myself out, nor do I act as an investment advisor. I do have those in my office. I own an actuarial and administration firm. So I think purely in mathematical terms. So if you ask me, do I think the market's going up or going down? I may have an opinion, but it's no different than you and I having a glass of wine talking about the weather. I mean, everybody's got an opinion, right?
Right.
It's too hot, it's too cold. We need the rain, we don't need the rain. I don't know, but I can tell you this one thing that you hit on is very important. And I think another resource that you can give to your audience here is usdebtclock.org. That is usdebtclock.org. It's a very unique piece of software. And it's a nonprofit, and what they do is it's an aggregation machine. It brings in all this data from all these different sources, all government sources. So this is accurate data about how much debt we have. But there's one section in particular that really bothers me, and it's off to the right. So when you look at US Debt Clock and you pull yourself off to the right, there is going to be a section there called the gross domestic product. That's all the goods and service, all the economic activity of our country. Typically, it's around $21-ish trillion, 22-ish, maybe 22. Right now, it is trending at 19. So we know there is significant economic loss of activity. But beside it, there's a very interesting category. And it is federal, state, and local spending. This is how much money the government spends at the federal level, the state level, and the local level, all added together. And when I ask somebody, do you think taxes are likely to go up? If I asked you, Tony, I think you're leaning towards, what do you think?
I'm leaning towards yes.
Yeah. But then the next question becomes a harder one, and you say, well, how much do you think they might go up to? And that's a tough one, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think we have some real guidance there for them just to break even today. If folks jump off of this after they listen and go look at usdebtclock.org and they look for that section, gross domestic product and federal, state, and local spending, next to it, there's a percentage. And that's the percentage of spending to GDP, meaning how much these governments are spending to take care of all the stuff that they do. As a percentage of all the economic activity. And today, Tony, that is 45%. So in order for them just to break even and not print more debt, but just to break even our tax rates, not to spend the debt down, just to take care of spending, not paying the interest on what we already have.
Okay.
It's 45%. So taxes would have to go to 45% of current economic levels in order to sustain.
Wow, that's a big number.
That's number,
yeah. So this is and I don't want to be bumming the audience out completely, right? And we really need to be able to be ready and prepared for this so we can respond rather than react. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with Matt here today, because I think it's very important. If you're a founding CEO, if you're a solopreneur, if you're working for someone else, it really doesn't matter. These are important principles that we all need to understand so we can prepare ourselves. So, Matt, where's the good news in this? Like, what can we do to help protect ourselves or bolster ourselves up? Clearly, it's not the time for a lot of big spending, right?
I don't. Spending is important. It's part of the GDP number, but the GDP number is telling us that a lot of people have already improved their houses. I mean, how many people do we know that have refinanced? So a lot of the economic activity that's driven by low rates and by this pandemic, the swimming pool people are booked for 2 years now. I mean, everyone's put in a swimming pool, right?
Yeah, the roof people are too.
Yeah. The question is, what do you do with your money? If you've got it, what do you do to protect it? Well, I do think there's some economic reasons that we need to be cautious. And let's talk about them. Is unemployment at some of the all-time highs? Absolutely. So we got a lot of people that aren't working. But people are scared, Tony. Because we look, Tony Maree, if you look at the amount of money today that is being held in money markets, money markets. Now, I understand money markets are paying nothing, right? It's almost $5 trillion. It's the highest level ever, even higher than when we were during the financial crisis.
Because people are seeing the writing on the wall, they're worried and they're wanting to go into more secure products.
Yeah. So, you start saying, where can I put money and not lose money? Right. Where can I put money and not be taxed to the end of zero, to the end of my money? Taxes are brutal, right? Where can I put money productively that when adjustments happen, markets change, that I can take advantage of opportunities? Because here's the thing, when bad things happen, I can't remember, it might have been the Rockefellers. I think they said, when there's blood in the streets, that's when we buy. It's a little bit of a rough but cash is king, and being ready to take advantage of opportunities are great. But today, more than ever, with what's going on, we're all attentive to the vulnerability of our health. What happens if we do get sick? What happens if we die? There are a lot of other questions that perhaps as younger professionals that you may be, appealing to because you're awesome. I think you're great. But, they're going, they weren't thinking, hey, I could die. They were thinking I'm invincible, And now we see that, disability. What happens if I'm disabled, So how do you split that atom? How do you create, when we have a finite number of dollars, how do we take care of our future growth for retirement and also be attentive to things happen? And if they do, how much money do I allocate to risk versus how much money do I allocate to my future growth? And it's a
Mm-hmm.
hard question, you know? So
Yeah,
there's a lot to go
definitely.
to consider. But one thing that you said is right, which is how do we manage our tax liabilities? Because if taxes are going up, tax-free dollars get more and more and more powerful.
Absolutely. Yes. I don't know the math on it, but I imagine they kind of increase in value, right?
Exponentially. So
Yeah.
if you think about a dollar that's in a 401k plan or an IRA plan that's a pre-tax plan, what happens if you currently are in a 24% bracket and because of everything that happens in the world today, you're at 40? Does it make the dollar that you have worth less? It does, because
Hmm.
you have to pay tax on distribution. So your money is worth as much as it is on a net basis. And on a net basis, if taxes are higher, your net is lower. Whereas if you have that in a Roth or a Roth 401k, then your net is the dollar because you've already paid your tax in the beginning. So it's really a balancing act of being tax aware and tax diversified, which we talk about in
Mm.
the book. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, obviously, if anyone wants to know more about this, there is Matt's book, although it's not available on the open market, so to speak, right?
No, I think last year, and I could be off on this number, but I think we've distributed a little bit over 30 some thousand books, all through financial advisors. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Tony, I don't know the size of audience you have, but if people would like to have one, if we can make some way for them to reach out, I'll find an advisor that can provide it to them. And if there's not one, I will personally provide it to them. I would never want to deny anybody information on it, but I quit selling it. I think it's on Amazon it's $65 or something stupid. So I would never. I don't want your audience to have to pay that.
No, well, absolutely. So also we will put in the show notes an email address that you can contact me, and I'll pass your information on to Matt. So just to protect Matt's privacy and make sure that his inbox isn't inundated, I will have my assistant allocate an inbox for that
Thank you.
specific question.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, we've talked about some pretty serious things. I want to hear about some of the mischief you get up to, because I know that you're a pretty fun guy as well. So would you be willing to share the Bentley story with the
Sure.
Legacy in the Making audience?
Are we PG level here? Or are we getting?
Well, there's a box that you have to click when you publish these things that says whether it's appropriate or not for children. And I say not appropriate for children, not because we're really doing anything especially untoward, but maybe you'll change that. Maybe this is going to be the first R-rated Legacy in the Making show.
You never know. I'll keep it clean, but I think that marketing is such an essential activity. The ability to communicate what it is that you offer is essential. Communication in general, and flavorful communications even better. Because I mean, being bored is not a whole lot of fun. But
No.
I've tried to build into my practice, in my life, studying great marketers, studying people who are great at sales. Sales is not a bad word to me. A lot of times when we're dealing with busy professional people, they know what they know and they're great at what they do. But to get the information that they need to hear, it may take some salesmanship or marketing to open the pathway to the conversation, and then
I
being
want
able
to
to
pause
communicate.
just there. Yeah, I love what you're saying there. And I think that this is something that a meme that perpetuates throughout the culture, which is just wrong, which oftentimes memes are, right? And this idea that sales is anything other than an act of service is just ridiculous, because what the essence of sales is you are matching someone with a solution for their problem.
Yes. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
what better service can you give than that?
Exactly. And and great salesmanship. You look at someone like a Brian Tracy, who
Mm-hmm.
he's great, and I've grown to really know him over especially last year. We spent a lot more time together. But Brian has a masterful way of making people who think of sales in a naughty way open their mind to the reality of the fact that it's an essential activity to help people make good decisions and solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
But if the sales quote unquote person doesn't present the problem, there's no solution. And that's a
Right.
skill, but you also have to be professional enough to identify the problem. I would argue that a dentist is a salesman, a doctor is a salesman.
Mm-hmm.
We all are selling people. If if you're married or been married, you sold somebody on you, right? So everybody's selling something. So I think that there's a misunderstanding. So in my pursuit of keeping my A game on and understanding the psychology of marketing and the psychology of selling, I seek out people that I think are emerging or the best, pay them whatever they ask so that I can learn from them. And many number of years ago, there was a younger than me, he would point out, marketer named Frank Kern, who's become a really good friend of mine. And he was just doing such an amazing job. He had such great swagger on his videos, and his communication skills were unique, and his languaging patterns were really charismatic. He had a real draw to the guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is somebody that's worth knowing. So I went out and we had a consultative day, and honestly, he really gave me a wonderful approach to improving my marketing that I thought was exceptional. I think the man is brilliant. I think he loves to do it playfully. So you think he's back then he was a drugged out surfer. Now he's just I don't know. He changes his persona. Now he's all GQ. Who knows? He's a nut job, but he's brilliant at marketing. And so we had a great day, and he's like, "Hey, what do you want to do now?" And I go, "Well, I don't know. What do you want to do?" So we jumped into his time at that time, a VW bus that he had all worked out, and we went and we had Mexican food, and we drank quite a bit. I like tequila, and we were drinking tequila and beer.
I know you're a tequila fan. Yeah.
God knows what else we had, but we had quite a bit. And next door was a exotic car place, and he says, "Hey, I got a car over there. I'm trying to sell. Why don't we walk over and see if I got any offers?" I go, "Hey, fine, So I'm walking by, and there's this beautiful, beautiful white Bentley, and I went, I said, I kind of like that. Now, understand, I'm fairly intoxicated. I mean, more than fairly intoxicated. So next thing you know, he's like, "Why don't you just buy it?" And I'm like, "How much would it be to ship?" Right? So the salesperson hears, and he goes, "Where do you live?" I go, "Outside of Pittsburgh." Right? He says, "Well, I'll get back to you." Right? So I'm figuring nothing of it. He goes, "It would only be about $1,500. I go, "Really?" So I started looking at the thing, and I call up the Bentley dealership in Pittsburgh and say, "Hey, how much would one of these cost?" And I realized there's an arbitrage. It's a better value. It's cheaper because there's so many of them in San Diego than there are. The number's a lot higher in Pittsburgh. And I'm like, I am going to buy the car. So I bought the car, and
can't resist a bargain, right?
Yeah, I talked myself right in. Next morning I wake up, I'm like, oh God, my head. I'm like, did I buy a white Bentley convertible last night? I'm like, I did. So that is the Kern in California Bentley story that you were asking about.
Yes, yeah, and that is a little bit more of a PG version than the one that I heard.
Yeah, I've left out about 4 or 5 things that probably I've never been.
That's great. Well, Matt, what else that I have not asked you would you like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, I think there's something you said that warrants a revisit, and that's about frugality. If you were to, we all should have wonderful lifestyles. We should all have exactly what we want. But to excessively go beyond that, it usually doesn't prove to be more life rewarding. So one of the great things you can do for yourself is to figure out exactly where you need to be, where your obligations, those things that you want and add real enjoyment to your life, plus your bills are met with your income. If your income is significantly over that, then what you want to look at is how can I build a plan, what we call conveniently SMART plans, which is the strategic movement around retirement taxation. And now a new one we just registered for trademark is the strategic movement around rising taxation, which I think is inevitable. But build a plan to dial your income from a tax perspective where you need it to be, and be mindful of opportunities to reduce your overall tax liabilities. We do a lot with tax credits. I do a lot of software development here for my company. And this past year, it resulted in me saving an additional $36,000 in taxes by using a specialist in R&D tax credits, someone who's attached to our Smart Plans firm, who's done 7,000 of them. The other thing is, I think that a fair question that anybody should ask of anyone that they are seeking financial advice from is this: do you do this yourself? I do not believe that anybody is qualified to present and provide you something if they aren't actively doing something very similar themselves. And now I'll bring the PG to a PG plus. It's with a little naughty line here. It's kind of like, I always say to folks in a jokingly way, especially if it's more of an industrial type guy, I'll say, look, I'll show you mine before I ask to see yours. And what I'm talking about is my tax return, right? So I'll whip it out and I say, let me show you what I did for myself. Because I think that, people want to know that you're genuine and authentic. And, and I mean, look, I do real well, but I've had people that make, 5 times what I do. And they don't care. It's the fact that they see that you do what you say. And I've had a lot of people where I make a lot more than they do. But, it becomes a pattern of success leaves clues. And if you're smart, you are watching and looking for success clues along the way to go farther, faster, by learning from other people's mistakes and also learning from the things that they do well. So I think that's all I got, Tony. I don't know if I have anything else for you.
That's great. Well, one more question I have for you, and then we'll wind up, is I know that you've got some great daily practices that you do. Of course, part of my work that I do is help leaders and high achievers get off the hamster wheel and start really accessing their deeper wisdom, knowing, and instincts, so they can take more time to enjoy the legacy that they're creating, so they can take more time to contribute, come up with great ideas to solve important world problems. And I do think it requires a calm mind, or at least times when we engage a calm mind in order to open up the space for that. So what sort of practices do you do, and what would you recommend to people?
Well, I do a lot. I have a very rigid process, as you know, and I've added you in. And listen, your audience needs to know. They need to know this. Look, you are unbelievable, and the insight that you bring to the table is incredible. But to take it up to the next level, sometimes there's some transitional pains involved with that, and you look sweet, but there was a point where you were torturing me pretty good, but I guess it was helpful, and very helpful. But the reality is, a structured life for me is what works best. Kind of winging it doesn't work. So I have certain affirmations that I listen to absolutely every day. Not that I believe that affirmations necessarily have the impact that something like the procedural things that you do have. It's much more impactful, but it reminds you. It keeps you focused on the mission, So I have 5 things that I'm repeating every single day, and I'm playing them on my, radio when I'm driving to work instead of listening to, different things. I want to make sure my core ideas are first and foremost on my mind every single day. I do the work that you put forward. I believe, I've got the equivalent of like a meditation type chair in my office so that I can take little mindful breaks. I have an infrared sauna that I think is helpful for me just to get hot, sweat a little bit, and just relax and think, without any noise or activity. And I'm a huge believer in a lot of physical activity. I have a trainer. 5 to 7 days a week, depending on whether he can come. I do martial arts almost every day. I kickbox almost every day. I believe I believe I could always do better at that. But I think that structure is extremely important for me. And when I'm not doing as well, when things aren't going well as I wished, to fix that, the best thing I could do is get rigidly structural and really make sure I'm doing all of the steps. So if I'm out of kilter, bringing it back to that rigid structure of every day's activity helps me get it back I'm not suggesting not have fun. Obviously, I've had some fun along the way,
yes.
but for the majority of time, a very structured approach to your daily routine. I don't know anybody that's not, that's hugely successful that doesn't have some pretty defined structure to their approach.
It's pretty true. It's like the daily disciplines, right?
Yeah.
Things that you need to do. And I know absolutely for myself. And I love that you talked about the sauna, because I'm a big sauna fan too. And I notice, like, part of my family history is anxiety. Like, there was a lot of anxiety in my family, and that was definitely something that I massively suffered from for a really long time. And I'm pretty energetically sympathetic, and so oftentimes I was actually kind of really processing like my family's anxiety. Even when I moved to the United States, it was uncanny the amount of times that I would start feeling really upset, and then I'd get like a phone call from my sister or my mom saying that something upsetting to them had happened, and I'd be like, okay, now I get why I was feeling that way. But there's still like a little bit of a biochemical thing there for me, and I know if I'm starting to feel that physical anxiety, for me, a sauna will really help shift that. Now, it's not the only thing I do. Obviously, I've got my own disciplines and practices that I use and that I teach my clients. And that one piece of detoxifying, like, I don't think most of us know exactly how many toxins we're exposed to and what we're walking around, just in the soup of. And so cleaning your system out can be a really important activity.
It's interesting and I know I have no expertise, but I will tell you my personal experience is that at temperature extremes, there's value, and for me, if there's one thing that I would add, if I could just easily do it, I would do it in a second, is a cold plunge pool, and I'll tell you, those are incredible. And of course, when you're functioning and working at a pretty high level, and there's quite a bit of pressure involved in what you do, anxiety and stress is inevitable. And I had some surgeries, as you know, in the past. And I had a horrible time with anxiety after, which I had no anxiety before then. So it was a really weird new experience for me. I went from feeling like I could control anything. If there was one guy under pressure that I wanted, it would be me, to like, holy shit, nothing is easy now. And like, driving down my road feels stressful. And I was on pins, and I'm like, what the hell's wrong with me? But I will tell you, one of the things that was extremely helpful to me was extreme cold. When I would plunge in the extreme cold, the anxiety would go through the roof for a second, and then I'd come out and start to warm up again, and it would go away. So I do think that there's legitimacy to, the cold. There's legitimacy to the extreme warmth, the sauna, the dry warmth of the sauna, and I do think that that's self-care is important. You can't be good to everyone else if you're not good, to yourself. If you're not available to be there for everybody else,
Right. Yeah. I love what you're saying there, because there are some pretty interesting principles that do actually associate, excuse me, that associate physiological stress, mental stress, and emotional stress, and that we can actually increase our capacity to manage mental and emotional stress by allowing ourselves to be exposed to physical stress. So that can mean exercise, in particular interval training type exercise that allows us to go to a peak and come back down again. I've personally been a fan up until COVID of Orange Theory Fitness. Ellen Latham, the founder, is a personal friend of mine. And so I subscribe, I drank her Kool-Aid and for a little while did not like having drunk her Kool-Aid, but kept with it because I didn't want to admit to her that I'd given up.
Well, I've given your friend money because I was an early member of that. It's a great way to train. And of course, with COVID, I built basically the equivalent of what they have there in my house.
Oh, good for you.
I don't want to go out,
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. That's fantastic.
I'm a friend, if I ever come visit you on LA, that she owes me a few drinks because I gave her quite a bit of money.
Well, she's actually in Fort Lauderdale, so
that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, she's so great too. I'm going to have to get her on this podcast. So where I was going with that is that understanding that as we do expose ourselves to physical extremes, it actually increases our capacity to deal with emotional and mental stress as well. And obviously there's some caution associated with that, like especially, and I do the cold exposure too. It's like I'm a big fan of Wim Hof, and I do the cold shower, the 2-minute cold showers and stuff. I just want to add a caveat that it really is important to get your breath practice under control before you expose yourself to these extremes, because you need to not shock your body so much that you induce a heart attack or anything like that. So just a little health warning on that. Don't try this at home without some expert guidance.
No, I agree, and I do agree with you that, that heavy physical activity, the TRX is an incredible piece of equipment. And when you mix that in with you get your heart rate really high and then you do a wall squat and then just breathe. And that's a whole different experience, where you're really, I'm 50 years old, so you got to watch. That's a good point. You can't overdo it, or else you might be doing the last wall squat you ever did, But I do agree with you that putting the physical stress can eliminate the stress and anxiety and make you more durable from stress and anxiety.
Yeah, resilient.
Yeah, resilience.
Yeah. I like durable though. You're kind of a durable guy. I like that.
I'm pretty durable.
Matt, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. Where are the best places for people to find you?
For the majority of folks, for financial professionals, there's mattzagula.com. If somebody is a very, very high net worth individual that's dealing with some tax issues, probably LinkedIn, Matt Zagula, would probably be the best place. If you're a law firm and you're dealing with high net worth people in the estate or tax area, it's where the majority of my business comes from. We're launching a new CPA program for CPE credits. So LinkedIn is probably the place where I am around the most. The Matt Zagula site is more for teaching specific types of advisors how to integrate more safe money type product into their practice to reduce volatility and decrease tax.
All right, that sounds great. So everyone, if you can't find Matt yourself and you want to connect with me, I'm connected with him on LinkedIn. So either way, you'll get to him. And LinkedIn, of course, is a very fun playground. I'm expanding further into that myself now, and partly because of the influence of your and my friend Paul McManus, who was the person that introduced us, which was very serendipitous. It's been really fun working with you and working with your team, because I've been training Matt's team of 250 financial advisors to be more resilient and to keep their eye on the prize, accountability and performance. And so if any of you are interested in keeping your eye on the prize and you need a little extra support, please feel free to reach out to me. And LinkedIn, once again, is a great place. All right, Matt, love you. Thank you so much for your time here. This has been a great conversation.
It's a privilege to be.
I'm glad you tuned in to the Legacy in the Making show. If you're genuinely interested in creating positive change in your business or your life, or on a more global scale, I invite you to connect with me at tonymaree.com. That's Tony with a Y, Maree with 2 E's. When you get there, you'll find the Path to Purpose Master Plan, the truly brilliant method to make sure you're clear on why you're here. This is the absolute critical foundation to honing your instincts and leaving a legacy you'll be proud of. You can also find out about the Innate Wisdom Business Council, which is an opportunity to evolve your vision in the company of like-minded leaders, and much, much more. Thanks for listening. Remember to subscribe to the podcast, and we'll see you next time.